All right. So here we are back at the Free Code Camp JavaScript Algorithms and Data Structures beta main page. All right, we just finished Learn Basic JavaScript by building a role-playing game. Now we're doing Learn Form Validation by building a calorie counter. All right. So sometimes when we're coding web applications, we will need to be able to accept input from a user. Very true. In this calorie counter project, we're going to learn how to validate user input, perform calculations based on that input, and dynamically update our interface to display the results. In this project, we're going to learn basic regular expressions, template literals, the add event listener method, and more. All right. So here we go with the first one. Here's the example. So yeah, we'll put like a daily calorie budget, a bunch. Who's ready to put on some pounds? And then we'll do something like add entry for breakfast, brownies, and 5,000. Add entry, and what else do we want? Ice cream. How about some that many? All right. Well, we're almost there. So there's that. Let me see what else. Is that good? All right. So let's just calculate remaining calories right here. And so we've got this much deficit. How many did we make? Eat already? 65,000, but we need 546,000. So this is how many more calories we need before we're satisfied. Anyway, and then we can also exercise if we want. We can go to exercise, add entry, lifting weights, and how about 120? Let's look. Oh, and there's 120 calories burned. All right. Anyway, so let's start coding. So here we are on step 1. So in this project, we're going to learn to create a calorie counter form that enables users to input their daily calorie budget and the calorie counts of various meals. The form will then calculate and display whether the user is in a calorie deficit or surplus. We have been provided with boilerplate CSS and HTML. Right? So we got the HTML here and then CSS here. We've got a bunch of colors, and we can check that out if we feel like it. Where are we? So, however, we will need to build our calorie counter form. So we can feel free to explore the CSS and HTML, which we just did, and then we'll add a form element and give it an ID set to calorie counter. All right. So let's start with that. We'll do a form element, form, close form, form, and then we're going to give it the ID of calorie counter. So ID equals calorie hyphen counter. All right. So let's check the code. Looks good, and submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 2. So in our form, users will be able to input a number which represents their daily calorie budget. We're going to create a label element and give it a for attribute set to budget and the text budget. And then we're going to create an input element with the ID set to a budget. All right. So budget, budget, budget. So let's do that. We'll create the label to start with. Close label. All right. We're going to give it the for attribute. So for equals, and then we'll say budget like that. Inside of here for the HTML text, we're going to say budget. All right. And then under that, we're going to make an input element, input, and give that the ID of, I wonder what, budget. All right, there we go. So let's check the code. Looks good, and submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 3. So our input element needs some additional attributes. We're going to give it a type set to number to only allow numeric inputs, a min attribute set to 0 to only allow positive numbers, and a placeholder set to daily calorie budget. And then finally, we'll mark the input element as required. You got it. All right, so first things first, let's get rid of this slash because we know we don't need it. They're just going to keep putting it on there, but for right now, let's not have that. So let's say type right here, and let's set it to number, all right? Then let's do min now equals 0, all right? Then let's do placeholder now equals daily calorie budget, like that, all right? And then finally, let's mark it as required, like that, right? So now we see over here, we've got budget text from the label. We've also got daily calorie budget like this. Let's try to push down. It only goes to 0 and then to the moon in the other direction, right? So let's check the code. Looks good, and submit it. All right, now we're on to step 4. So in our form, users should have the capability to add various meal types along with their calorie counts, all right? So we're going to create a field set element with the ID set to breakfast. And within that element, we'll create a legend with the text breakfast and an empty div with the class set to input container. All right. So let's start off by making the field set, field set like this, and then close field set. All right. And so we've got this going on right there. And we'll say inside of this ID equals breakfast. All right. So we're going to drop this down and then we're going to put a legend in here. Legend, close legend. And in the legend text, for the legend text, we'll call it breakfast. All right. So now we've got breakfast right there. And after the legend, we're going to make an empty div like that. And we'll give it the class of input container. So class equals input hyphen container. All right. So that should take care of it. Let's check the code. Looks good, and submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 5. So next we're going to create a field set element with the ID set to lunch. Within that element, we're going to create a legend element with the text lunch and an empty div with the class set to input container. All right. So it's a little copy paste time. So let's take from all of 25 to the end of 21. Copy that. Let's highlight 26 to the end of 25. Paste it. Let's change this ID breakfast to lunch. All right. Let's change this HTML text to capital lunch. All right. And the rest of it should be good. So let's check the code. Looks good, and submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 6. So continuing the pattern, we're going to create a field set for dinner with the same nested elements. All right. So we'll take 29 to the end of 25. Copy that. We'll take, we'll go from 30 to the end of 29, drop it off like this. We'll change this lunch to dinner, and we'll change this capital lunch to capital dinner. All right. So that should take care of it. Let's check the code. Looks good, and submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 7. So now we're going to need 2 more of these field set code blocks, one for snacks and one for exercise. All right. So let's take 33 up to the end of 25 so we can get 2 of them. Copy that. We'll highlight 34 to the end of 33, drop it off like this. Let's change this lunch to snacks, and then capital lunch is going to be capital snacks. And then we'll have this dinner be exercise, size, and then capital exercise right here, size. All right. So now we've got 2 more, and we've got 5 field sets going on right there. So let's check the code. Looks good, and submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 8. So when users want to select a meal type to input their calorie counts, they should be presented with a drop-down menu and a button to add the meal type. We're going to start by creating a div element and assign it a class attribute with the value controls. Then we'll nest a span element inside of this div. All right. So we'll start by having a div, close div, and we're going to give it the class attribute of controls, right? Controls. Whoa. Class equals controls, all right? And then so inside of this div, we're going to nest a span. So let's drop this div down and let's put span, an open span, and a closed span like that, right? So let's check the code. Looks good, and submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 9. So in our span element, we're going to create a label element for an entry dropdown, and we're going to give it the text add food or exercise with a colon. Then we're going to create a select element with the ID set to entry dropdown and a name set to options. Below that, we'll add a button element with the ID set to add entry and the text add entry, all right? And then we're going to give our button element a type attribute set to button to prevent automatic form submission. All right. So let's start off by creating the label element. All right. So let's open up a label and close the label. All right. And since it's for entry dropdown, we're going to do the for attribute for equals entry hyphen dropdown. All right. And then we're also going to give the text add food or exercise. Add food or exercise, like that. So now we've got this text right here. Now we're going to create a select element with the ID set to entry dropdown. Right. So this is what the label's pointing towards. So we'll do a select. Select like that and close select. And then we'll give it the ID of entry dropdown. So ID equals entry hyphen dropdown also. All right. And then we're also going to be, we're also going to give it the name attribute, name equals options. All right. So now we've got this drop down right here that we're going to have to fill up in a little bit. And now that we've got that, below that, we're going to make a button element with the ID set to add entry. So let's do a button with the close button and the, what is it? The ID of add entry. So we'll say ID equals add hyphen entry. And then we're going to give it the text add entry. All right. And then we're going to give it a type attribute set to button. So we'll do type equals button, like that, right? So now we've got the drop down, we've got the button, and that should be it for now. So let's check the code. Nope. Should have the text add food or exercise. Don't forget the colon on that. Check the code. Come on. Exercise, add food or exercise. Add food or exercise. Label. Oh, don't forget to put the slash on label as well. So let's check the code. Looks good on the close label and submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 10. So our select menu needs options for each of the food and exercise field set elements we created in the previous steps. We're going to use the option element to create a new option for each field set. The value attribute of each option should be the ID of the field set, and the text of each option should be the text of the legend. And we're also going to set the breakfast option as the selected option. All right. So yeah, on 46, we're going to start off with an option tag, an option element. We'll open up option like this and close option like that. All right. So now we're going to give the opening option the value of, value equals, and we'll say breakfast to start off with breakfast. And then we're going to have the text be capital breakfast. All right. Capital breakfast. All right. So this is what the ID is of the field set. And this is the text of the field set. So, the text of the legend, I should say. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take all of 46 up to the end of 45, copy that. We'll drop it down 1, 2, 3, 4 times. We'll start with the second breakfast and call it lunch. The third one we'll call dinner. Fourth we'll call snacks. Fifth we'll call exercise, like that. Then we'll make the fifth breakfast text be capital exercise. Then we'll do on the fourth one, capital snacks. Third one, we'll do capital dinner. Second one, we'll do capital lunch. All right. And now we're also going to have to set the breakfast option as the selected option. So after the value, we're just going to type selected thusly, all right? And that should take care of it. Now over here, we've got all 5 of these inside of the options thing, and breakfast is the one that's selected. Let's check the code. Looks good. And submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 11. So we're going to create another div element, and within that, we're going to nest a button to submit the form. This button should have the text calculate remaining calories. And then we're going to add a button with the ID set to clear the form. We're not going to forget to give it the type attribute that prevents it from submitting the form. And this button needs the text clear in that. All right. So let's start off by making the div. So we'll have the opening div, close div. All right. Inside of this, we're going to drop it down and we're going to put, whoa. Oh yeah. Don't forget to close it. Yeah. So anytime, real quick, anytime you do this and it goes and indents it like that, it means you didn't close it. I learned that on the last, in the last few videos. So let's do that. Let's close it off like this, drop it like that, and then we'll put a button in there. So button like that, close button. All right. And we're going to give this one the submit. We're going to say type equals submit, type equals submit like that. And then we're going to make the text in this calculate remaining calories. So calculate remaining calories. All right. So let's highlight this one from 56 to the end of 55, copy it and drop it off at the end of 56. Let's change the type on this one since we're going to make sure that it prevents it from submitting. We're going to change this to button like this. All right. We're going to give it the ID of clear. So ID equals clear. And then we're going to give it the text of clear as well. So we'll just get this stuff right here and call it clear. All right. So now we've got these two buttons right here. We're going to have to link them up somehow in the JavaScript, but we've got those right now. So let's check the code. Looks good. And submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 12. So our form needs somewhere to display the results. We're going to add an empty div element and give it an ID of output and the class values of output and hide. All right. So let's do that. We're going to have the empty div. So open div, close div. All right. We're going to drop this down. And for this one, we'll have, actually, we're not going to drop it down. Inside of this one, what we're going to do is we'll say ID is output. Like that. And then we're going to give it the class values of output and hide. Right. So I don't know about you, but I forgot how to do double class values. So let's come over here. Let's say class HTML like that, right? So we've got the W3 schools right off the top. Let's click that. And if we scroll down here to multiple classes, we can see that when we have multiple classes, we just put a space in between them like that, right? So we'll say class equals, and then inside of here, we'll do output and hide like that. So let's check the code. Looks good. And submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 13. So finally, we're going to need to link our JavaScript file to our HTML. We'll create a script element to do so. All right. So we're at the bottom of the body element right here. After all this stuff has already ran and printed out on the page, just like this right here. And so now we're going to do the script element. So we'll have the open script, close script. All right. And inside this one, we're going to give it the source of this thing right here. So we'll say src equals, and then inside this string, we'll do /script.js like that. And now this should link to the JavaScript page over here. All right. So let's check the code. Looks good. And submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 14. So now it's time to start writing the script that makes our form work. To access an HTML element with a given ID name, we can use the getElementById method. So here's an example of how to use this method. So we've got H1, and inside of the opening H1, we got the ID of title. And then we've got main title as the HTML text. And then we've got the close H1 here. Then we're doing const main title element equals document, and then we'll do getElementById, and we'll do title. So we've been using the query selector method, but with this one, we don't have to have the hashtag because it knows it's an ID, all right? So we're going to begin by getting the form element using the ID and storing it in a variable called calorie counter. All right. So let's pretty much do it just like this. We'll say const calorie counter equals document.getElementById, and then we'll have the string in there. And for the string, as it says here, we're going to get the form element, but we're going to be using the ID, right? So the form would be like this. It would be like a form element. But we're going to have to come over here to the index.html to find the actual ID. So if we look through, we'll see the form is right here on step on line 13, and the ID is calorie count with a hyphen in between, right? So we'll come over here in between the quotes and we'll say calorie hyphen counter like that. We'll press end, cap it off with a semicolon, check the code, looks good, and submit it. All right, now we're on to step 15. So now we're going to get our budget ID element and assign it to budget number input, and we'll also get our entry ID element and assign it to entry dropdown. All right. So let's take all of one by triple clicking one. We'll copy that. Actually, triple click gets us the next line down too. So let's just take all of one like this. How was the best way to do that? No, not like that either. All right. So let's just do that. Copy it, go down to 2, drop it off, press enter, drop it off on 3 also. We'll get calorie, the second calorie counter, we'll turn it into budget number input. So budget number input, all right? And the third one we'll do entry drop down. So entry drop down, all right? And then we'll change the ID inside of entry drop down to entry hyphen drop down. So entry hyphen drop down, all right? And then the second one will change into budget. So budget, thusly, right? So that should be good. Let's check the code. Looks good, and submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 16. So following the same pattern, we're going to assign our add entry ID element to add entry button, the clear ID element to clear button, and our output ID element to output. All right. So yeah, let's just take all these from 3 to 1, copy it, and then just drop it off on 4 like that. Let's take the second calorie counter, call it add entry button. Then we'll get the budget number input, the second one of those, and call it clear button. Then we'll get the between. Whoa, come on. Now. There we go. And then we'll get this second entry drop down, and we'll call it output. Then we'll change up this entry drop down ID right here to output. Then we'll get the budget, the second budget, and we'll call it clear. And then we'll get this calorie counter and call it add hyphen entry, add hyphen entry like that. And that should take care of it. Let's check the code. Looks good, and submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 17, and so in programming, prefixing a variable with is or has is a common practice to signify that the variable represents a Boolean value. This is the first time I've ever heard about this. So here are a few examples. We've got let is running equal true and let has completed equal false. We're going to declare a variable named is error using let, and we'll initialize it with false, allowing for its reassignment later. And then later on in the project, we're going to update the value of is error if the user provides an invalid input. All right. So yeah, we're using let because we're going to be changing it between true and false. So let's come down here onto line 8, and we'll say let is error equal false thusly, all right? So let's come over here, check the code, looks good, and submit it. All right. Now on to step 18. So when the user inputs their daily calorie budget, the input field will only accept numerical values. However, if a number is entered with a plus or minus sign, we're going to need to remove those characters. So we'll start by declaring a clean input string function that takes an str parameter, right? And then here's a note. Values from an HTML input field are received as strings in JavaScript. So we're going to need to convert these strings into numbers before performing any calculations. Converting string values into numbers will be covered in a future step. So that's important for later, right? Just so we know that, like, if we get a bunch of numbers, we're going to have to turn them into numbers because they're going to be strings before they're numbers. Hopefully that makes sense. Anyway, let's do this. So we're making a function. So we'll start by declaring the function with function, and we'll say clean input string with the parameter str, and then we're going to have the code block with the curly braces right here. So let's check the code. Looks good, and submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 19. Okay, so to match specific characters in a string we can use regular expressions, or regex for short. So regex in JavaScript is indicated by a pattern wrapped in forward slashes. The following example will match the string literal hello, all right? So we've got const regex equals hello between these two slashes, right? So basically what regex is kind of like a search engine inside of our JavaScript. We'll be getting into it in depth later. But anyway, so we're going to declare a regex variable and assign it the value from the example above. In future steps, we're going to update this regex pattern to match specific characters needed for the calorie counter. All right. So yeah, inside of here, what we're going to do is we'll say const regex equals, and then we'll have two slashes. Whoops, two slashes. And in between here, we'll do hello like that. Let's cap it off with a semicolon, check the code, looks good, and submit it. All right, now we're on to step 20. So the current pattern will match the exact text hello, which is not the desired behavior. Instead, what we want to do is search for the pluses, for pluses, minuses, or spaces. So we're going to replace the pattern in our regex variable with this backslash, a plus, and a minus to match the plus and minus characters. And note that we need to use the backslash character to escape the plus symbol because it has a special meaning in regular expressions. Very true, all right? So basically on this hello, if we put like a plus after this, from what I remember, okay, let's do this. Let's come over here, regex JavaScript, right? So basically, all the stuff on regex is going to be over here. And we can see right here, the plus sign right here. See the quantifiers, okay? So if we put a plus sign after it, it's going to match the preceding item X one or more times. So it would match the O a bunch of times if we did it like this. So we have to escape it with the backslash because it's not going to be matching backslashes. And then we'll put the minus sign right there because minus isn't really special unless it's a different kind of thing. And we'll get into that as well. So this is what they're looking for. Let's check the code. Looks good. And submit it. All right. Now on to step 21. So in regex, shorthand character classes allow us to match specific characters without having to write those characters in our pattern. Shorthand character classes are preceded with a backslash, right? The character class \s will, and that's lowercase s, will match any white space character. We're going to add this to the regex pattern, right? So let's go look at this real quick. Back here on the regex page at MDM, we can see all these different character classes right here. So there's a bunch of different ones that do different things, like the lowercase d, which does digits, w, which does pretty much any character. And then we've also got the \s for white spaces. And we'll probably go through a lot of these. That being said, what we're going to do is right after this minus sign, we'll have this \s. All right. So what this is doing, this is matching this one right here. This is one thing. This is another thing. And this is another thing right here. Whoops. This is another thing. Come on now. Right. Come on now. Right here. Anyway, so let's check the code. Looks good. And submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 22. So our current pattern won't work just yet. This pattern looks for plus, minus, and space in order, right? So it would match the plus, minus, space hello, but it would not match just plus hello. So to tell the pattern to match each of these characters individually, we're going to need to turn them into a character class. And this is done by wrapping the characters we want to match in brackets. For example, this pattern will match the characters, H, E, L, or O. So we've got this right here with brackets around it. And it has this going on right there. So we're going to turn our regex pattern into a character class. And we're going to note that we no longer need to escape the plus sign character because we're using a character class, all right? So yeah, over here on the character classes page, it's right here at the top. Same thing, character classes, it matches any one of the enclosed characters when we put brackets around it. So what we're going to do on this one is inside of the two slashes, we're going to take all of this stuff that's inside of there, wrap it in brackets, and then we're going to also get rid of this backslash as well, right? Actually, what happened? Hold on. Make sure you get the S while you're at it, Let's do that again. Get rid of the backslash. Check the code. Looks good. And submit it. All right. So now we're on to step 23. So regex can also take specific flags to alter the pattern matching behavior. Flags are added after the closing slash. The G flag, which stands for global, will tell the pattern to continue looking after it's found the match, all right? So here's an example. We've got const hello regex equals hello inside of the two slashes, and then we have the G after this slash right here, all right? So to look that up over here on the MDM, we'll go back to the regular expressions page, and it's going to be towards the middle or towards the bottom middle. But we've got this, actually it's towards the middle. But yeah, we've got these different flags here. We've got global search right here for G. We're pretty much only going to go over G and I, if I remember correctly, but there's a bunch of different ways to do it. I mean, a bunch of different flags that we can use, right? So basically on this one, all we got to do is just right before this semicolon and after this slash, push G. Because if we don't have this G here, it'll only match this stuff one time, right? And that's a very important factor in regex. I don't know why they didn't say that, but if it will stop looking after it finds it one time unless we have the G for global search. So let's check the code. Looks good, and submit it. All right, now we're on to step 24. So JavaScript provides a replace method that enables us to replace characters in a string with another string. This method accepts two arguments. The first argument is the character sequence to be replaced, which can be either a string or regex pattern. And the second argument is a string that replaces the matched sequence, all right? So if we want to look up the replace method, we can just come over here and let's go see if we can find it here. Replace string.prototype.replace. I think that's it. Yes. So basically we could use either a string or we could use some regex to replace this stuff. So the first syntax, the first argument is the pattern, and the second is the replacement. And not only can it be a string for the replacement, it can also be a function. And we'll get into functions later or not. I don't remember. So let's get back into it. So since strings are immutable, the replace method returns a new string with the replaced characters, right? In this example, the replace method is used to replace all instances of the letter L with the number 1 in the string hello. So yeah, in this one, we've got this hello right here. We're going to say replace anything that's an L because we've got the global search flag with the number 1. So when we return this, it'll have HE11O like that. So we're going to use our regex to replace all instances of plus, minus, and a space in str with an empty string, and then we'll return that value, right? So what we're going to do here is, since it says return to start off with, we'll come over here and say return, and we'll do, what are we going to do? str.replace, and what we're going to replace is whatever regex we find, whatever stuff we find in the regex, so the plus, the minus, so the plus, the minus, and the space, any of those, we'll replace them with an empty string like this. So we'll pass in a string from the input over here, whatever input we put in. I don't even know where we're at, where we're at over here. Maybe it's here. Who knows? Anyway, if we put a plus or anything like that in here, it'll clean it up like that. It'll take the spaces out. It'll take the pluses, the minus out, and it'll just basically delete them, turning them into nothing, right? So hopefully that works. Let's cap this off with a semicolon, check the code. Looks good, and submit it. All right, now we're on to step 25. So now it's time to test out our clean input string function. Inside our clean input string function, we're going to add a console.log statement with 2 arguments. The first argument should be the string, original string with a colon and a space after it. And then the second argument should be the str parameter. All right. So let's do console.log, console.log. We'll have a string that says original space string colon space. And then after that, we'll have the comma and we'll say str as the second parameter. Let's cap this off with a semicolon, check the code, looks good, and submit it. All right, now we're on to step 26. So to see the results from the clean input string function, we're going to need to add a console.log statement. Inside that console statement, we're going to call the clean input string function with the string value of plus minus 99 as an argument. Then we'll open up the console and we should see the original string followed by the clean string value with the plus and minus removed. All right. So let's do a console.log, console.log. We'll do clean input string like that. And for the argument, we will put a string that says plus and minus 99 like that. Let's open up the console. Original string is plus minus 99, pardon me, plus minus 99. And here's the console.log with the function call. Looks like it works. Let's check the code. Looks good. And submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 27. So once we have finished testing our clean input string function, we can remove both of our console statements. All right. So let's get rid of 15 to 13 like this, to the end of 13. And then let's get rid of 10 to the end of 9 like this. Let's check the code. Looks good. And submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 28. So in HTML, number inputs allow for exponential notation, such as 1e10, which is 1 times 10 to the 10th power, which is like 1 with 10 zeros. So we're going to need to filter those out. We'll start by creating a function called isInvalidInput. And this should take a single str parameter. All right. So let's do that. We'll say function isInvalidInput. All right. We're going to give it the parameter of str, and then we'll have the set of curly braces like that. Let's check the code. Looks good. And submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 29. So now we're going to declare a regex variable and assign it a regex that matches the character E. All right. So this was in this one was in local scope, or is in local scope. So we can make another local scope regex variable. We'll just say regex, const regex equals. We could have just taken that up there anyway, but let's have the 2 slashes like this, and we're just going to look for the E like that. We don't need to have the G because we're just going to be looking for like 1E10. So there's only going to be 1 E at a time in these things. So let's check the code. Looks good. And submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 30. So the E in a number input can also be uppercase E. All right. Regex has a flag for this, however. The I flag, which stands for insensitive or case insensitive, right? So we could have a regex like this with a capital H in hello with an I flag like that, and the following regex would match. You could have lowercase hello, uppercase hello, all uppercase hello, and even crazy case hello like this because of the I flag. So the flag makes our pattern case insensitive. All right. So now we're going to add the I flag to our regex pattern, right? So let's just put that right here at the end, right after the slash where the G would have gone if we were doing global search. Check the code. Looks good. And submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 31. So number inputs only allow the E to occur between 2 digits. To match any number, we can use the character class 0 through 9, all right? So it's going to be brackets with a 0, a hyphen, and a 9 like that. And this is going to match any digit between 0 and 9. So let's go talk about this for a little bit because there's some special stuff going on here. So let's come back over to the regex page. We're on the replace right now. We'll go to regex. And when you get to this one, if you're ever here by accident, just click the regular expressions chapter. You can get to where we're supposed to be. So we'll come down here to the character classes right here. And right here, we're going to say we can also specify a range of characters by using a hyphen, right? So like A through C or 0 through 9, right? But if the hyphen appears as the first or last character enclosed in the square brackets, it's taken as a literal hyphen to be included in the character class as a normal character, right? So see, we've got ABCD with a hyphen or hyphen ABCD. It'll match a hyphen if there's one in the thing in the string we're trying to match. We're trying to search, right? And also we can see we can have like a range of characters like these ones, and we can match a hyphen as well. So just to let you know about that. So let's come back over here. What we're going to do now is add this character class before and after E in our pattern, right? So right here, we'll have the brackets we'll do 0 through 9 like this. We'll copy it, the brackets and all, and we'll put it after the E, right? So this is going to match a number before E and a number after E. Any digit 0 through 9. Later, we'll probably get to a place where we're going to add like a plus sign to it, so we can search more than just one digit at a time, right? So let's check the code. Looks good, and submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 32. So the plus sign modifier in a regex allows us to match a pattern that occurs one or more times, just like I said in the last one. To match our digit pattern one or more times, we're going to add a plus after each of the digit character classes. For example, we'd have a 0 through 9 with a plus sign, right? So let's go over that real quick. Let's come back here. And if you need to search for it later, just come over here to the regex page, regular expressions page, come down here. And when you see this X plus, that's what we're looking for. So we'll go to the quantifiers, and to read about it, it just matches the preceding item X one or more times. So anything before that, like a character class, a digit, whatever. All right. So over here, what we're going to do is we're going to put a plus sign right after this bracket for this character class. All right. And then we're going to do the same thing for this character class right here. So just like that. So it's searching for this one thing, all right? So it can be any amount of digits. Then it's going to search for an E, and then it's going to search for any amount of digits. And it's got to be this specific thing, all right, Kate? All right, okay. Anyway, it's got to be this specific thing. If it doesn't find an E in there in the middle of two sets of digits, then it's not going to match, all right? We'll go over all that later. Let's check the code. Looks good, and submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 33. So there is a shorthand character class to match any digit, the lowercase d with a slash in front of it. So it's slash lowercase d, whatever. We're going to replace our 0 through 9 character classes with this shorthand. So let's go over that real quick, just in case you need to find this later, right? So we'll come over here to the regular expressions page, and then we'll come down here to the character classes. It's another kind of character class. And it's going to be right here. And the reason I'm showing you all this is because later, whenever you feel like practicing your algorithms and stuff on Code Wars, you're going to see there's going to be a lot of regex masters in there that know exactly what they're doing, and they use all this stuff, right? So you'll be looking at this long string of regex, and you're like, what's going on here? And then if you just come to this page right here, or any of these little pages right here, you'll be able to figure it out. It might take a couple of minutes, maybe 30 minutes, or maybe an hour or two, but you'll definitely be able to figure it out. So that being said, here's the lowercase d, and it matches any digit, and it's equivalent to 0 through 9. So it's just like a character class with 0 through 9 in it. And we can just do lowercase d instead of all this brackets and hyphens and stuff. So, all right. So let's highlight this thing right here. Let's do a slash lowercase d. Whoa. Backslash lowercase d. My bad. Backslash lowercase d. Copy it, and then let's do the same thing on this character class right here, right? So now we've got a digit. We're matching any number of digits here, an E, and any number of digits here, all right? And it can be case insensitive. So this E can be capital or lowercase. And that's exactly how that's going for when we pass in a string later, right? So let's check the code. Looks good, and submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 34. So strings have a match method, believe it or not, which takes a regex argument. So the match method will return an array of match results containing either the first match or all the matches if the global flag is used, right? So here's an example. We've got this example string right here. We've got some regex, which is just specifically looking for the word example between these two slashes, right? And then we've also got this const result equals str. So this string dot match this regex inside of it, right? You can put the regular regex, you can actually put it inside there if you feel like it, or you can make a variable beforehand like what we're doing, right? And then when we would return result, it would be an array with the word example in it because it matched this inside of this string. So it would only take this. It wouldn't take the rest of the string, right? And that's basically one way how we can use regex. The other way was the, what was it? The replace method that we did earlier, right? So let's go through the rest of this. So we're going to return the result of calling the match method on str and passing our regex variable as the argument. And we're going to use this match result later on. All right. So like it says right here, we're going to return the result. So we'll say return in front of, right down here, pardon me, return. And what we're going to do is str. So the, what is it? It's the parameter dot match. And we're going to match the regex. All right. So we're going to, whatever parameter we pass into this function, whatever string we want, it's going to look for, what is it? Like numbers, an E, and some more numbers. So basically, I'm pretty sure we're going to use this thing over here. We'll do something like this, 10, E, 10. So if it sees this, it'll say, okay, yeah, that's cool. We can use that match or something like that. We'll find out specifically later, right? So let's cap this thing off with a semicolon, check the code, looks good, and submit it. All right. So now we're on to step 35. So now it's time to test our isInvalidInput function. For this test, we're going to want to check if the function can detect scientific notation like 1E3 or 10E2. And while this is a valid way to represent numbers, it's not a valid input for our choice, for a calorie counter project. Yeah, so I was wrong. Something like this is not cool. All right. But we'll figure this stuff out in the next few. So below our isInvalidInput function, we're going to add a console statement. Inside the console statement, we're going to call the isInvalidInput function with an argument of 1E3 inside of a string, right? We'll open up the console to see the result, and in the next step, we're going to learn more about what the result means. All right. So we're going to call this thing inside of a console.log. So let's get this first. Let's do console.log, console.log. We'll drop that off inside of there. We'll add some parentheses after it. And inside of there, we're going to do the string 1E3 like that. So let's come over here to the console, open it up. All right, so it does match this, and it also has a bunch of other stuff in there, which hopefully we'll learn about it, but we may not. We'll see. Now let's cap this thing off with a semicolon. Check the code. Looks good. And submit it. All right. Okay, so it does. So now we're on to step 36. So when we open the console, we should see this result. Let's open this up while we're at it. So the 1E3 index equals 0, pardon me, index colon 0, input colon this stuff, and then groups colon undefined. And that's exactly what we get. So the match method returns an array with any matches found in the string, true. So here's a complete breakdown of the info. We got 1E3, and this is the matched value against this regex that we made, all right? We got index is 0, which is the index of the matched value in the string, right? So the string is this thing, index 0 would be right here if it was broken down into indexes, right? Input 1E3, this is the input that's searched for, and then, or the original string that was matched. And then groups undefined are the matched groups, which are not used in this case, but we're going to learn more about groups in a later project. All right. So now is the time to test for a valid input. We're going to update our console statement to the following. So we're just going to change it to 10 instead of this 1E3. And we'll open up the console to see the result. It's already open. So let's do this. Let's put the 0 right here. And we can see it says null. So that means it's not an invalid input, right? So that is valid. So let's check the code. Looks good. And submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 37. So when we open the console, we should see the result of null. The match method returns null when no match is found. In this case, the isInvalidInput function should return null when the input is a valid number without any scientific notation, all right? So yes, we still have the null just like in the last one. So null in JavaScript is a special primitive data type that represents the intentional absence of a value. In a Boolean concept, null is considered falsy, which evaluates to false in a conditional statement. All right. So now that we've finished testing our isInvalidInput function, we can remove the console.log statement. All right, so let's get rid of this thing. Triple click, delete, and it's gone. So let's check the code. Yay, we're finished. All right, next to the next project. Just kidding. And submit it. All right. So now we're on to step 38. And all right. So our next step is to allow users to add entries to the calorie counter. We're going to declare an empty function add entry, and this function should not take any parameters. All right. So let's create a new function with function. Let's bring it back. Whoa. How about that? And let's give it no parameters, and then we'll have, whoa. Hold on. Function add entry, and then we'll have no parameters, and then we'll have the block of code like that. So let's check the code. Looks good, and submit it. All right. Now on to step 39. So we're going to need to know which category the entry goes in. Thankfully, we added a drop-down for the user to select a category. We sure did. So we're going to remember that we queried that drop-down earlier in our JavaScript and assigned it to the entry drop-down button. We don't even have to remember. We can just look. Yes, we did do that. All right, right here. Well, actually, we're going to need this, so let's just take that while we're at it. So we can use the value property to get the value of the selected option. We're going to use concatenation to add a hashtag to the beginning of the value property of entry dropdown and assign that result to a target ID variable. All right. So yeah, we're going to make a target ID variable to start with. So let's say const target ID, lowercase d equals, and then we'll have a hashtag, a string with a hashtag in it, like this. And then we'll do plus, and then we'll do entry dropdown dot value, like that. Cap it off with a semicolon, check the code, looks good. And basically, actually, let's go over this. So basically, like, let's say it's breakfast, it's the breakfast value. So it's going to put a hashtag in front of breakfast, and it's going to target the breakfast ID, which would be like right here. You see this one? All right. So that's basically what's going on here. So let's go back to the JavaScript and submit it. Oh, wait. Check the code. Looks good. And submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 40. So now we're going to need to target the input container element, the input container class element within the element that has our target ID. We're going to declare a new target input container variable and assign it the value of document.querySelector. We'll use concatenation to separate target ID and the string dot input container with a space, and we'll pass that string into the query selector. All right. So this one's a little bit confusing, but we'll get through it. Let's start off by doing a const, and we'll do target input container, right? And what that's going to equal is the document dot query selector, right? And the reason we're using query selector on this is we're not just targeting an ID, we're targeting an ID and a class, right? So basically, let's go over here and check this out. So like you see right here, we've got breakfast ID right here, but we've also got the input container, which is this div right here, right? So basically, it's going to be targeting when we do an add entry. What are we doing here? When we do an add entry here, it's going to target this one specifically, the breakfast input container. You see how each one of these, like lunch ID has an input container, dinner ID has an input container. It'll specifically target the breakfast's input container class. All right. Hopefully that makes sense. So let's get rid of the HTML. We'll come over here. And so we're going to start with the, target ID, right? So target ID. So it's this thing here that we're putting a hashtag in front of whichever dropdown we're going for. And then we're going to also concatenate. We'll say plus the string, and we'll do space input hyphen container. All right. So it's going to, in the end of it, it's going to look like this. At the end of it, it should look like this. What is it? Target no, excuse me, let's say it's breakfast. It'll be like hashtag breakfast space dot input hyphen container, like that. So this is basically what this thing's going to be, with this query selector is going to be looking for. And it's going to specifically be targeting, like I said, this div, in this case, this div right here. Excuse me, this div right here. Hopefully that makes sense. We'll go through this a little bit more later. So let's get rid of this and cap it off with a semicolon at the same time. Thusly, let's check the code. Looks good. And submit it. All right. Now on to step 41. So JavaScript has a feature called template literals, which allows us to interpolate variables directly within a string. Template literals are denoted with backticks, all right? And this key is to the left of the number one and right above the tab key, all right? As opposed to single or double quotes. Variables can be passed into a template literal by surrounding the variable with a $sign and a set of curly braces. And the value of the variable will be inserted into the string. So for example, we've got const name equals Naomi, and then we've got const template literal equals, and we've got the backticks right here instead of the quotes. And we have hello, comma, my name is, and then this thing right here with the variable name inside of it. And so when we do console.log template literal, it'll come out, hello, my name is Naomi, plugging this into here for that. So let's come over here to the MDM, just in case you, in the future, you forget about these, because I know I have. And we come over here, we can just look up template literal, all right? So we've got this right here, and pardon me. It's basically, these things are great for multi-line strings, string interpolation with embedded expressions. And the embedded expressions is what these things are called right here. And also tag templates, which we haven't used yet. Well, I haven't used yet. So there we go. That being said, let's come back over here. So now what we're going to do is replace our concatenated string in the query selector with a template literal. And we're going to be sure to keep the space between our target ID variable and the input container class. All right. So yeah, what we want to do here, let's just wrap this whole thing up inside of the parentheses and then put some backticks like this. All right. Now that we've got the backticks, let's get rid of the quotes around input container. All right. So let's just take care of this one here, and then let's go to the direct left of the period and just delete until we make the plus sign disappear. And then we're going to make the template literal right here. So let's double click this one, wrap it up with a set of curly braces, and then put a $sign in front of it. And you see this change colors. Now it knows it's putting this inside of here. So if we did a console.log on this, it would say breakfast ID, it would say hashtag breakfast space input container, just like it did before. But this saves just a little bit of time, and it's a little bit more useful too. So let's check the code. Looks good, and submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 42. So thanks to the template literals, we actually don't need the target ID variable at all. We're going to remove that variable and update our template literal to replace target ID with entry dropdown dot value. All right. And we're going to remember to add the hashtag before it in the string. All right. So yeah, we don't actually need this line of code anymore. We can just take entry dropdown value, the whole thing from the E to right before the semicolon, copy that. Let's double click target ID and just drop that right there. Let's get all of 20 to the end of 19 and just delete that. And then in front of this $sign, we're going to put the hashtag thusly, right? So now it's reading hashtag entry dropdown dot value. So breakfast, lunch, dinner, snack, whatever. And then space dot input hyphen container like that. So it's just like we had before, but with a lot less typing, right? So let's check the code. Looks good, and submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 43. So now we're going to want to number the entries a user adds. To get all of the number inputs, we can use the query selector all method. The query selector all method returns a node list of all the elements that match the selector. A node list is an array-like object, so we can access the elements using bracket notation. All right, so it's a little bit deeper than that. and we're going to go that deep right now. So let's go check out query selector all. So let's come over here and we'll type in query selector, and there it is right there. So like it says, it's going to return it. Okay, so this says it's a document method that returns a static, so not live, node list. So we don't really need to know the difference right now. Representing a list of the document's elements that match the specified group of selectors. Okay, so what's a node list, right? We can go through this whole thing, and it's just very abstract. These guys haven't gotten to a point where they can simplify it yet, but it's basically just going to be a list of all the elements we're looking for, right? So let me try to visualize this for us over here. So let's come down here, and you don't have to do this. You can just watch this. Let's do something like this. Let's take this right here, like this const matches. I'll just take this. Const matches document.querySelector all P, right? So let's drop this off right here. So we don't have any P's in our thing right now, in our document. So let's put H1 because we do have this H1 right here, right? So now that we've got that, what we want to do is we'll do a console.log matches. So console.log, and let's go over here to the console, and let's say matches, like that, right? So this is the node list, okay? As it says, it's kind of like an array-like object, but it's not. It's actually just an object with the keys being strings of numbers, all right? So let's get one that's a lot bigger than that, like the divs, right? So you can see we've got all the divs right here. We've got 8 different divs inside of our index.html. Here's the first one, and then the last one's way down here somewhere, right? So let's do the H1 again, all right? So let's say H1 one more time, H1. And so we have that right here. Here's the H1. So to access this, we're going to use bracket notation, okay? Because this is a string with a number in it. We can't just have a number as the key, right? So it's got to be a string number. It's like a number could be like a variable name without the quotes around it, but when it is a number, it's got to have the quotes. That being said, so to access this, we're going to use bracket notation. We'll say matches at 0, right? So here that is right here. It's this thing right here. So here's the little object. And now let's go try to let's get this calorie counter stuff on here. So what we want to do here is we're going to say dot inner HTML. And look, it says calorie counter just like that. So it's targeting this H1, and it's saying the inner HTML, which is this stuff right here. We could do that for the div as well. Div, and you can see. Whoa. Let's make it inner text. That's a little much for me. Inner text. How about that? Inner text. How about that? All right. So we got budget, breakfast, lunch, dinner. Let's come over here. We can see budget, breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks, whatever, and what have you. Let's do the HTML one more time anyway. Why not? This one's going to be a little long, but you can't get this. You can't get this anywhere else, folks. HTML like that, right? So we've got form ID calorie counter. So this is this div right here. So here's the form ID calorie counter, all right? Then we've got the label for budget, and then here we've got the input. So this is how we're going to access this stuff, all right? That's basically what's going on. Hopefully this makes sense. Let's get rid of this and let's get back to what they're telling us, right? So now we're going to declare an entry number variable and give it the value of target input container.query selector all. And we're not going to need to pass an argument to the query selector just yet. Okay. So we're going to make an entry number variable. We'll say const entry number, all right? And what that's going to equal is this thing right here, target input container dot query selector. We'll take this, and then we'll say all at the end of that. And then we'll have the empty parentheses like that because we don't need a argument in there yet. And we'll cap it off with a semicolon, check the code, looks good, and submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 44. So each entry will have a text input for the entry's name and a number input for the calories. To get a count of the number of entries, we can query by the text inputs, all right, by text inputs, pardon me. Note that we cannot query by number inputs as we have an extra number input for the user's calorie budget. All right, I'll take your word for it. We're going to take your word for it. All right, so we're going to pass the string input and then in brackets type equals text in quotes right here to the query selector all method. We're going to remember that we will need to use single quotes for our string so that we can use double quotes within, right? So we'll put the single quotes around this thing so we can use these double quotes right here, all right? And this is going to return a node list of all the text inputs in the form. And we can then access the length property of the node list to get the number of entries. And we're going to do that on the same line. All right. So yeah, what we're going to do here is we're going to start by having the single quotes thusly. And then we're going to put inputs, some brackets like this. And then we'll say type equals some double quotes. And inside of the double quotes, we'll do text thusly. All right. So now that we've got that, what we're going to do is access it with the length property. So we're going to say after this parenthesis, we're going to say dot length. All right. And if we were to bring this down and do a console.log on all this, right now it would say undefined because we haven't actually put any text inputs in. But once we start adding like breakfast of pancakes and lunch of salad or whatever, it'll say like length of this. The length will be 2 because we have 2 inputs in it. Stuff like that, right? So let's check the code. Looks good. And submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 45. So now we're going to need to build our dynamic HTML string to add to the web page. We're going to declare a new HTML string variable and assign it an empty template literal string. All right. So yeah, for this one, let's come down to 22 and say const. And then we'll do HTML string like this, all right? So let's say that equals a empty template literal thusly, and we'll cap that off with a semicolon. And we're going to bring this, we're actually going to end up bringing this down, and we're going to do the thing that we were talking about earlier on the template literals, where we're talking about multi-line strings. So we're going to do a bunch of different lines in this one string right here, right? So let's check the code. Looks good. And submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 46. So inside our template literal, we're going to create a label element and give it the text entry number name. And using our template literal syntax, or the embedded expression, I should say, we're going to replace the hashtag with the value of entry number. All right. So yeah, right now we're inside of this template literal. All right. So what we're going to do here is we're going to start by having a label element. So we'll do label and close label like this. All right. And inside here, we're going to have the text entry. And then we're going to do the embedded expression. So the $sign and the 2 curly braces. And then we're going to say name. Whoa. We're going to say name like this, right? And so inside of this embedded expression, we're going to do entry number, right? So what we're doing here, basically, let's come over here to the example page, right? So what we're doing here is, you see how there's no nothing other than this stuff on the screen right now. So when we add entry, this stuff just popped on the screen. Well, this stuff right here is fresh HTML that was made using this thing right here, okay, using this template literal. So we're making a label, entry number name, and it's going to be entry, and then here's the number and name, all right? So that's it. This is exactly what we're making right now, right? And then we're going to make this and this and this, and that's basically what we're doing, right? So let's check the code. Looks good. And submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 47. So for this one, we're going to give our label element a for attribute with the value x hyphen number sign hyphen name, right? Where x is the value of the entry drop down element and the hashtag is the value of entry number. we're going to remember that HTML attributes should be wrapped in double quotes. All right. So remember, we're still inside of this template literal, so we can still use a bunch of embedded expressions. So we're going to do the for attribute inside of here, for equals, and then we're going to have the double quotes like that. And we're going to have the X, which is the value of the entry dropdown. So we're going to have an embedded expression, and then we're going to have a hyphen. Whoa. And then we're going to have a hyphen, and then we're going to do another embedded expression. And then we're going to have another hyphen, and then we're going to have name like this, all right? So right inside of this one, we're going to have the entry dropdown, which is this thing right here. This entry dropdown here, which is the get element by ID entry dropdown. So we'll do entry dropdown, I should have taken it from up there, dropdown dot value like this. Value, there we go. And then this one's going to be the entry number as well. And remember, the entry number we made up here, it's going to be the input type equals text.length. So once we have the first one, it's going to be 1, and then 2, and then 3, because that's what the links are, right? And then that should be it for now. Let's check the code. Looks good. And submit it. All right. Now on to step 48. So after our label element and on a new line in our template string, we're going to create an input element. We're going to give it a type attribute set to text, a placeholder attribute set to name, and an ID attribute that matches the for attribute of our label element. All right. So let's drop this down. Let's drop it down twice. I don't like how it's on the same line. And then in here, we're going to make the input like that, right? So we don't need the closer input or anything like that. And inside of here, we're going to give it the type equals double quotes text. Okay. Then we're going to give it placeholder. Whoa, placeholder, not it's not camel case. And we're going to do that. We're going to give it name for the placeholder. Then after that, we'll give it the ID equals. And then inside of here, we're just going to use this entry dropdown dot value and all this other stuff. So we'll get from the $sign to the E in name, copy that and drop it off between these two quotes right here. And what this is making is this thing right here. You can see we've got, let's add another entry. You can see we've got the name placeholder right here inside of this input thing. And then if we could see the ID, this thing would have the ID of this stuff, which would be entry dropdown.value. So the breakfast hyphen entry number. So it would be one breakfast hyphen one hyphen name like that, right? So let's check the code. Looks good. And submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 49. So now we're going to create another label element on a new line at the end of our HTML string. And this label should have the text entry hashtag calories using our template literal syntax to replace the hashtag with the value of entry number and the for attribute set to this thing where it's just like the other one, right? So what we're going to do here is first we're going to take 23 to the end of 22 like this, all right? Copy that. And then right here at the end of 24 between the what is this thing? The backtick and the angle bracket. We'll drop it off like this, okay? So now we're going to change this stuff up just a little bit. So we're going to change this name here to calories instead with lowercase calories. So calories. And then we're going to change, where are we? Oh, and then we're going to change this name right here to calories as well. Capital calories, calories. All right? So it's basically the exact same thing since we're doing this right here. So it looks the same. It's just this is changed, all right? And then this is changed too, but you get it. So let's check the code. Looks good. And submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 50. So believe it or not, what we're going to do on this one is exactly like we did for this one, this input. So let's just take this input, all of 24 to the end of 23, copy that. In between the backtick and the angle brackets, just like on the last one, drop it off thusly. And let's change name here to calories. Calories, calories. And then let's change this to calories as well. Calories. All right. So that should take care of it. Let's check the code. No, come on. Oh, it's a type number. All right. Let's change that to number. If we would have read that, we didn't know. And a min attribute set to 0. Dang, we should have read it. Oh, I should have read it. So anyway, number right here. And then we're going to do a min equals. And then right here, we'll do 0. Have a space between that. Right. So there we go. We should have read it, but didn't. Whatever. Anyway, so let's check the code. Looks good. And submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 51. So to see our new HTML content for the target input container, we're going to need to use the inner HTML property, right? The inner HTML property sets or returns the HTML content inside an element. So here's a form element with a label, an input element nested inside, all right? So we've got the form with the ID of form, then we've got a label with the for attribute of first name, and then the text of first name. And then we've got the input with the ID of first name, which links these two together. And then we've got the type equals text right there. So if we want to add another label and input element inside the form, then we can use the inner HTML property shown below. So if we want to add another set of these, but with different fors and text, we can do this stuff, right? So what we're going to do is have const form element equals document.get element by ID form. So it's accessing this whole form element right here. Then we've got const form content equals, and this is a template literal with a label with a for attribute with last name in it, the HTML text of last name. And then we also have the input ID of last name right here, and the type equals text, right? So when we say form element dot inner HTML plus equals form content, we're going to add to this thing, which is this thing. All right. So it's not only going to be this, it's going to be this followed by this. All right. So we're going to use, the addition assignment operator to append our HTML string variable to target input container.html, inner HTML. All right. So yeah, we're making this input container right here using the entry drop down dot value input container thing. Okay, so we're making this, right? And what we're going to do is we're going to put all this stuff inside of it by using this little method right here. So we're going to access this thing, we'll get this, drop it down here, and we'll say inner HTML, right? Plus equals, and then we're going to add HTML string to it. And then we'll cap it off with a semicolon, right? So basically what this is doing is just like we were seeing over here, it's making brand new ones of these things. So there's another for every time we're going to click the add entry button, it's going to do the add entry function. And we just got to link this to this at some point, right? So let's check the code. Looks good. And submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 52. So in the role-playing game project, we learned how to set a button's behavior by editing its on-click property. We can also edit an element's behavior by adding an event listener, right? So the following example uses the add event listener method to add a click event to a button. When the button is clicked, the print name function is called. All right. So we've got a button and with the class attribute of BTN. And then it's got the HTML text of print name. So it's just like this, but it's got print name as the text, right? So we've got const button equals document.query selector, and then we're accessing the button class, okay? So when we say function, and then we've got this function declaration of print name, and when we call this function, it will log in the console the name Jessica, right? And then, so what we're gonna do to get it to work when we click it is we'll say button.add event listener. We'll have click as the first parameter, and then print name, which is this function's variable name or whatever. And that's as the second parameter. There we go. And so whenever we click the button after that, it's going to print Jessica in the console, right? So the add event listener method takes two arguments. The first is the event to listen to. So for example, the click, and there's all kinds of things we can put in there, like key down, we can put double click, we could do all kinds of stuff. There's a huge list. And the second is the callback function, or the function that runs when the event is triggered. So we're going to call the add event listener method on the add entry button. We'll pass in the string click for the first argument and the add entry function for the second argument. And we're going to note that we should not call add entry, but pass the variable or function reference directly. All right. Yeah. So don't put the, what are those things called? The parentheses after add entry. That's basically what that's saying. So what we're going to do is we're going to access this thing. All right. So let's come up here. And we've got add entry button right here. We'll click that and copy it. Come down here, drop it off. And we're going to say .add event listener, .add event listener. All right. So inside of here for the first argument, we're going to have click as the event to listen to. And then we're going to have as the second argument, add entry. All right. So it's this thing, right? Well, whatever. It's way up there, but you know, it's this thing. Okay. So let's, actually we can test it out now too. So let's check it. Look at that right there. Although we do have a problem here that we're going to have to address where it starts with 0. But all we got to do for that is where it says .length right here on entry number, we just push +1 and clears it right up. All right. But we'll do that in the next one or the next few. Who knows? Let's check the code. Looks good. And submit it. All right. Now on to step 53. So if we try adding a couple of entries to the breakfast category, we may notice some bugs. Yeah, we do. Look at that 0, 1. That's not good. The first thing we need to fix is the entry counts. The first entry should have a count of 1, not 0. And this bug occurs because we're querying for input type equals text elements, before adding the new entry to the page, right? So this is happening before we actually add this to it. So to fix this, we're going to update our entry number variable to be the value of the length of the queries +1. We're going to add this to our declaration line, not to the template string, right? So yeah, just like we did in the last one, we're going to add it to this one right here. At the end of length, we'll push +1 thusly. And now when we do it, 1, 2, 3, no big deal. Looks great. Let's check the code. Looks good. And submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 54. So the other bug occurs if we add a breakfast entry, fill it in, then add a second breakfast entry. We'll see that the values we added disappear. Okay, so let's check that out. Add one. How about some brownies? How about some 500 calorie brownies? All right. Let's add another entry. Where'd our brownies go? All right. So this is because we are updating inner HTML directly, which does not preserve our input content. So yeah, this thing right here, not going to work. So we're going to change our inner HTML assignment to use the insert adjacent HTML method of target input container instead. We're not going to pass any arguments yet. So yeah, this is pretty much the only time so far in Free Code Camp that I've seen us use this. There's not much to it. I mean, it does what it says it does. So what we're going to do here is we're going to double click the inner HTML. We'll say insert, what did it say? Adjacent HTML, adjacent HTML, like that, right? And then we're going to get rid of the plus equals HTML string, and we'll just leave it like this for now. So let's check the code. Looks good, and submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 55. So the insert adjacent HTML method takes two arguments. The first argument is a string that specifies the position of the inserted element. And the second argument is a string containing the HTML to be inserted. So for the first argument, we're going to pass the string before end to insert the new element as the last child of target input container. And for the second argument, we'll pass our HTML string variable, right? So this right here looks so crazy that we're going to have to go look this thing up. So let's grab this, come over here, drop it off here, and boom. Let's go check out insert adjacent HTML, all right? So the syntax is a position. So these things right here, and then the text. So it can be any text we want that'll be parsed as HTML. But we're going to use, but these positions are the weird looking things. So we've got before in, that's what we're going to use, which is just inside the element after the last child. After begin, just inside the element before the first child, I should say. So I guess this would go, if we did this, it would go to the front, I guess. If we used after begin, it would go to the front instead of at the end. Before begin is before the element, and that's only valid if the element is in the DOM tree. Well, we'll figure that one out later. And after end is pretty much the same as this one, but opposite. We'll figure that out too. All right, so now that we've got that going on, let's do what they say. We're going to put before end right here. So we'll put the string before end, all right? And then we'll have a comma, if I can get it in there. We'll have the comma, and then we'll say this thing right here, HTML string. So let's just drop this right there. So let's check the code. Looks good. Actually, let's test it out. Add entry, brownies, 500. Add entry. Haha, okay, so it does keep it there. And submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 56. Great. Now we can add entries without losing our previous inputs. Yes, very good. So our next step is to write a function that will get the calorie counts from the user's entries. We'll declare a get calories from inputs function, and give it a parameter called list. All right. So we'll do function get calories from inputs. We'll give it a list parameter, and that's it for now. So let's check the code. Looks good, and submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 57. So in our new function, we're going to declare a calories variable and assign it the value of 0. We're going to use let to declare it since we will be reassigning it later. All right. So let's do let calories equals 0 for now. All right. Let's check the code. Looks good, and submit it. All right. Now on to step 58. So the list parameter is going to be the result of a query selector, which will return a node list. A node list is a list of elements like an array. It contains the elements that match the query selector. We already went over this. We will need to loop through these elements in the list. So in previous steps, in previous courses, we learned how to use the for loop we learned how to loop through an array using a for loop. We can also use a for of loop to loop through an array and a node list. A for of loop is used to iterate over elements in an iterable object like an array. The variable declared in the loop represents the current element being iterated over, right? So I don't remember if we went over for ofs or whatever, but like here's the example. We've got for const element of element array, and then we're going to console.log every single element in the array. So instead of saying like for let I equal 0 while I is less than whatever, I plus plus, and then saying array at I, we don't have to use the bracket notation. It already knows the element is the is element array at I. It already knows that. So you can just push element and avoid the bracket notation, right? So we're going to create a for of loop that loops through the list. For the loop's variable name, we're going to use const to declare a variable called item. All right. So yeah, we'll start over here on 38. We'll say for const item of list. All right, because we're going to be iterating through whatever the node list that we pass in is. All right, and then we'll just go from there on the next few steps. Let's check the code. Looks good, and submit it. All right, now we're on to step 59. So the node list values we're going to pass to the list will consist of input elements. So we're going to want to look at the value attributes of each element. We'll assign item.value to a const variable called curval. All right. So we'll do that. We'll say const curval now equals item.value, right? So whatever elements from the list that we passed in to this function, we're going to check out their values, right? And we're going to manipulate them. I don't know what we'll do. We'll see. Let's check the code. Looks good. And submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 60. So remember that we wrote a function earlier to clean the user's input? Do you? Yeah, we made this, didn't we? Actually, while we're up here, let's just take it because we know we're going to have to use it. So we're going to need to use that function here. Okay. We're going to update our curval declaration to be the result of calling clean input string with item.value. All right. So yeah, we're going to use this thing as the argument for this thing right here. So let's just wrap this in parentheses. All right. And then let's put clean input string in front of it. So basically what we're doing, it looks like whenever we put the calories here, like 500 calories, whatever, this is probably going to store, the inputs. And if we put like 500 E1, it'll clean it up. Oh, and some hyphens and some spaces. Oh, whatever. Anyway, so it'll clean up the string, whatever. So let's check the code. Looks good. And submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 61. So we're also going to need to confirm the input is valid. We're going to declare an invalid input match variable and assign it the result of calling our isInvalid input function with curval as the argument. All right. So let's, oops. Hold on. Okay. Let's do const invalid input match. All right. And what that's going to equal is we'll do the isInvalid input. What is it? The function that we made earlier, and we'll put curval in there, right? So basically, once it cleans up like the hyphens, because I mean it doesn't let spaces in there, but once it cleans up the hyphens from this thing, it'll start checking to see if there's like e's in it, and if there are, this thing will come back true, and then we'll do something with it. All right. So let's check the code. Looks good, and submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 62. So we're going to remember that our isInvalid input function returns string.match, which is an array of matches or null if no matches are found. All right. So I thought it was going to return true or false, but it's going to return either an array or null. All right. And that thing is right here. This thing right here. So string.match returns an array. I forgot. Anyway. So in JavaScript, values can be either truthy or falsy. We know that. A value is truthy if it evaluates to true when converted to a Boolean. And a value is falsy if it evaluates to false, when converted to a Boolean. Null is an example of a falsy value. And then an array is a truthy value because an array with something in it exists, all right? So we're going to need to check if invalid input match is truthy. And we can do this by passing the variable directly to our if condition without a comparison operator. And here's an example of checking the truthiness of hello world. We've done this before, plenty. So we just put hello world in there, and if it's truthy, it'll run. If it's falsy, it won't run. So we're going to add an if statement that checks if invalid input match is truthy. All right. So let's come down here and let's say if, come on. If, and then let's just make the code block first, and then let's get this thing right here and put it inside of here. So if this thing is truthy, so if it actually is an array, we'll do something, and if not, we'll just skip it, all right? So let's check the code. Looks good, and submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 63. So browsers have a built-in alert function, which we can use to display a pop-up message to the user. The message to display is passed as the argument to the alert function, right? So yeah, we'll just pass whatever string we want inside of here, inside of the parentheses, right? So using a template literal in our if block, we're going to call the alert function to tell the user invalid input, space, and then it's going to be followed by the first value in the invalid input match array. All right. So what we're going to do here is we're going to start by saying the alert thing, right? So we're going to have an alert right here, and then we're going to put a template literal inside of this instead of a regular string. And we'll say invalid input, space, make sure it's capital input, space, and then we'll do the embedded expression. So $ with the curly braces. And inside of here, we're going to put invalid input match at 0. Come on now. At 0, there we go. And then let's go to the end and cap this thing off with a semicolon. There we go. Let's check the code. Looks good. And submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 64. So in programming, null is meant to represent the absence of a value. In this case, if the user enters an invalid input, we're going to want to alert them and then return null to indicate that the function has failed. So still within our if block, we're going to set isError to true and we'll return null. All right. So remember at the beginning, we made this isError equals false with this let declaration, whatever it is. So let's just go up here, take that. We'll come over here to the if statement and we'll say isError equals true. Cap that with a cap that off with a semicolon. Then we'll return null like that. And hopefully this should work. Let's check the code. Looks good and submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 65. So we're going to remember that return ends the execution of a function. After our if block, we need to handle the logic for when the input is valid. Because our if statement returns a value, we don't need an else statement. Correct, right? So since this thing ends with return right here, we don't need to say do this else, do something else. This is just fine right here, right? So we're going to use the addition assignment operator to add curval to our calories total. We're going to need to use the number constructor to convert curval to a number. The number constructor is a function that converts a value to a number. If the value cannot be converted, it returns nan, which stands for not a number. So here's an example. So we've got the number constructor right here, and then we've got some parentheses, and inside of that, we've got the string 10 right here. And it's going to return the number 10. But when we have the number constructor with a string with letters in it, it's going to give us nan, right? And this thing, the number constructor is very, very useful. If you go over to the Code Wars algorithm practice later, this thing, there's a ton of neat little tricks that we can use the number constructor with. Anyway, that being said, so let's check out the calories thing real quick. So where's calories? That's one of the things I wanted to look for. Calories. Okay, so see, calories is 0. So if we added the curval to 0 and we didn't turn it into a number, it would just say 0 string, it would be this string 0 with the numbers that the calories were in front of it, right, or behind it, something like that. It'd be like this. Let me show you. It would look like this. 0 and then whatever, instead of just 3434 whatever. Okay. So just to say that, let's do this. So what we're going to do is we're going to say calories right here. Calories plus equals curval. And then we're going to wrap this in parentheses right here. And then we'll say in front of this, the number constructor like that. We'll go to the end and cap it off with a semicolon, and that should take care of business. Let's check the code. Looks good. And submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 66. So after our for loop has completed, we're going to return the calories value. All right. So yeah, this thing's going to go through. It's going to have the calories right here, like we've already established. And then what's going to happen? So let's just go through what's going to happen before we actually assign this to calories, calculate remaining calories. So like right here, let's say it's got 4 calories. On the next one, it's got 3 calories. On the next one, it's got 2. And the next one's got 1, right? So it's going to go through this for loop. First, it's going to clean the string. Okay? Like let's say it has 4 minus, and then in front of it, it's got a plus, right? It's going to clean the string. If it's got an E in it, it's going to say it's invalid, right? But if once it cleans the string, it's going to put this, it's going to add it to the calories like that. So it'll go 4 the first time, then it'll go down to entry 2, add 3, add 2, add 1, and then after we return it, it's going to be 10, right? So we'll just say return calories, all right? So that's how that works. Let's cap it off with a semicolon, check the code, looks good, and submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 67. So now it's time to start putting it all together. We're going to declare an empty calculate calories function, which takes a parameter named E. This function will be another event listener. So the first argument will be, the first argument passed will be the browser event. And E is a common name for this parameter. All right. So what we'll say right here is function calculate calories. All right. We're going to give it the parameter of E because we know it's going to be an event listener. Then we'll have the block of code. We'll check the code. Looks good. And submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 68. So we will be attaching this function to the submit event of the form. The submit event is triggered when the form is submitted. The default action of the submit event is to reload the page, and we're going to need to prevent this default action using the prevent default method of our E parameter. All right, so yeah, when we press this and it does the submit, it's going to, if we don't have this prevent default, it's just going to refresh the page, just like if we were to do this. And so to prevent that, we're going to prevent the default on our E parameter. And then we're going to add a line to our calculate calories function that calls the prevent default method on the E parameter. Okay. And then we're going to reset our global error flag to false. All right. So yeah, first step, let's do the prevent default. So we'll say prevent default like that. Cap it off with a semicolon. That's not a semicolon. Cap it off with a semicolon. And then on the next line, we're going to do the global error flag. So let's just come up here. So let's take this is error from the is all the way to the semicolon, including it. And then let's just drop it off right here. So that should take care of it. Let's check the code. Come on now. Do I calculate calories? E. Oh, yeah. E dot. There we go. E dot prevent default, because that does nothing if we don't do that. Let's check it. Looks good. And submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 69. So our function needs to get the values from the entries the users added. We're going to declare we're going to declare a breakfast number inputs variable and give it the value of calling document.querySelector all with the selector hashtag breakfast inputs and then an input and then a set of brackets with type equals number, right? This is going to return any number inputs that are in the breakfast ID element. All right. So yeah, let's say we've got some brownies for 500 calories, and how about some ice cream, also for 500 calories. We're going to start the day right, you know. So what it's going to do is it's going to go through this one, and it's going to put the 500 in this node list that it's looking for, and then it'll put the second 500 in the node list, because remember, query selector all returns a node list. All right. So let's do that. Let's say down here, const breakfast number inputs equals. We'll say document dot query selector all And then inside here, we'll have the string and we'll put the hashtag breakfast. All right. So, and then we'll put input with a set of brackets, and inside the brackets, we'll put type equals number. All right. So like we learned earlier, it's going to come down here. It's going to see, where's breakfast? It'll see ID breakfast right here. And then it'll look for any inputs inside of this ID that have the numbers. And then we'll have the numbers inserted in there once we do this thing, right? And we put them in the input container, right? So there we go. Let's cap this thing off with a semicolon. That's not it. What did I just do? Okay, let's cap this thing off with a semicolon. Check the code. Looks good. And submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 70. So using that same syntax, we're going to query our number inputs in the lunch ID element and assign them to lunch number inputs. All right. So yeah, we'll just do this, but for lunch instead. So let's highlight all of 39 and 38. Copy that. Highlight all of 40 and the end of 39. Drop it off. We'll double click breakfast right here and we'll change it to lunch. And then we'll double click it again, copy it, and then we'll highlight this breakfast, paste lunch like that, right? So that should be good. Let's check the code. Looks good. And submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 71. So following the same pattern, we're going to query for our number inputs in the dinner, snacks, and exercise ID elements. We'll assign them to variables following the naming scheme of the previous two. All right. So for this one, since this one's shorter, 40, let's just take all of 40 to the end of 39. Copy that. Let's highlight 41 and the end of 40 and drop it off 1, 2, 3 times like that. Let's change the second lunch to dinner. Dinner. We'll do snacks on this third one. Snacks. And then exercise. Pardon me. Second, third, fourth one. Yeah. Exercise like that. Let's take exercise, highlight this fourth lunch, boom. Snacks, third lunch, boom. Dinner, second lunch, a boom. Boom. There we go. So that should take care of business. Let's check the code. Looks good and submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 72. So now that we have our list of elements, we can pass them into our get calories from inputs function to extract the calorie total, all right? We'll declare a breakfast calories variable and assign it the result of calling get calories from inputs with breakfast number inputs as the argument. All right. So yeah, on line 45, that's where we're going to start this. We'll say const breakfast calories. All right. And what that's going to equal is the get calories from inputs, which is right here. We'll get this. We'll drop it off here. We'll have the set of, what are those? The parentheses, cap it off with a semicolon, and then we'll get breakfast number inputs, copy that, and then drop it right in here. Right. And that should be good. Let's check the code. Looks good and submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 73. So now we're going to declare a lunch calories variable and give it the value of calling, get calories from inputs with our lunch number inputs. All right. So for this one, let's take 45. Let's just take the whole line since they've given us the line on 46. Drop it off here. And let's change lunch. Let's get this lunch right here. How about that? And then change breakfast here to lunch. Change this breakfast to lunch. Come on. Copy this. Change this breakfast to lunch. Let's see if this works. Okay. And then the same over here. And let's check the code. Looks good. And submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 74. So following this same pattern, we're going to declare variables for the number inputs in the dinner, snacks, and exercise ID elements. We'll assign them the appropriate get calories from inputs calls. You got it. All right, so let's take lunch again because it's shorter. from 46 to the end of 45. Copy that. Let's highlight 47 to the end of 46. 1, 2, 3, drop it off 3 times. We'll take dinner to start with. We'll replace the second lunch with dinner here and with dinner here. We'll get snacks. Replace the third lunch with snacks. And then we'll do the same with this one, snacks. And then we'll get exercise. And we'll replace the last lunch with this and the last lunch with that. All right. So that should take care of it. Let's check the code. Looks good. And submit it. All right. So now we're on to step 75. So we also need to get the value of our budget ID input. We already queried this at the top of our code and set it to the budget number input variable. However, we used getElementById, which returns an element and not a node list. So a node list is an array-like object, which means that we can iterate through it and it shares some common methods within an array, right? For our getCalories from inputs function, an array will work for the argument just as well as a node list does, okay? So we're going to declare a budget calories variable and set it to the result of calling getCalories from inputs. We're going to pass an array containing our budget number input as the argument. All right. So yeah, we're going to declare this budget calories thing. So let's do that. We'll say const budget calories. All right. And what that's going to equal is the get calories from inputs. So let's get this one right here. Actually, let's just get the whole thing. Let's get this whole thing right here. Actually, let's get the whole thing with the semicolon. How about that? And copy that, drop it off like this. We could have just taken any of these, honestly. Let's change this breakfast number inputs to budget number input, no S. And that should take care of business. Let's check the code. Oh yeah, we're putting this in an array. So let's put this in an array by just wrapping this in brackets. Check the code, looks good, and submit it. All right, now we're on to step 76. So our get calories from inputs function will set the global error flag to true if an invalid input is detected. We're going to add an if statement to our calculate calories function that checks the truthiness of our global error flag. And if it is truthy, then we're going to use return to end the function execution. Okay. So if this is truthy, so if there is an error, we're going to do we'll just do a return statement and it'll get out of this thing, right? So we'll come down here onto 52 and we'll say if is error, and that's truthy enough for us. If it is, we'll just do a return. And that's all we got to do. Cap that off with a semicolon, check the code, looks good, and submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 77. So it's time to start preparing our calculations. We're going to start by declaring a consumed calories variable and assign it the sum of breakfast calories, lunch calories, dinner calories, and snacks calories. And note that the order matters for the test. Yeah, so do this in order because even though it doesn't really matter, for the test it does. We're going to be sure to do this after the if statement. All right. So we're going to declare a consumed calories variable and then have all these added together inside of it. So let's say const consumed calories, and that's going to equal all four of these things, all four of the top four. So let's double click breakfast calories, hold down Alt, double click lunch, double click dinner, double click snacks. Let's copy that. Let's drop that off at the end of this one right here. All right, let's drop a semicolon at the end of it just because we're going to have to anyway. Come up here, let's press end, space, plus, space, delete, space, plus, space, no. End, space, plus, space, delete, end, space, plus, space, delete. All right. So that puts them all online, or on the same line, I should say. And it adds them all together. So let's check the code. Looks good. And submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 78. So now we're going to declare a remaining calories variable, and we're going to give it the value of subtracting consumed calories from budget calories, and then adding exercise calories to that. All right. So we're going to declare remaining calories, and we're going to subtract this from this, and then we're going to add that. So let's do that. What was it called? Remaining calories? Okay. So let's come down here and say const remaining calories equals budget calories. We'll start with that. Minus consumed calories. All right. And then plus exercise calories. Drop that off right there. Cap it off with a semicolon. Let's check the code. Looks good. And submit it. All right. So now we're on to step 79. So we need to know if the user is in a caloric surplus or deficit, right? So a caloric surplus is when we consume more calories than we burn. And a caloric deficit is when we burn more calories than we consume, okay? Burning as many calories as we consume is called maintenance, and it can be thought of as a surplus or a deficit of 0, okay? Depending on our goals. So we're going to declare a surplus or deficit variable. Then we're going to use a ternary operator to set surplus or deficit to the string surplus or deficit, depending on whether remaining calories is less than 0, right? If it is less than 0, then surplus or deficit should be surplus. Otherwise, it should be deficit. All right. So we're going to declare a surplus or deficit variable. All right, let's start with that. So we'll say const surplus or deficit, like that, equals. And then we're going to do a ternary operator. So if remaining calories is less than 0, we're going to do surplus, okay? Do the string surplus. So what was it? Remaining calories? So remaining calories, this right here, if this is less than 0, what we're going to do is have the string surplus, like that. If not, all right, so the colon, if not, we're going to do deficit. So deficit, like that. Let's cap that off with a semicolon, check the code, looks good, and submit it. All right. So now we're on to step 80. So we're going to need to construct the HTML string that will be displayed in the output element. We'll start by assigning an empty template literal to the inner HTML property of the output element on a new line at the end of the function. All right. So we're going to construct the HTML string that will be displayed. Okay, so it's going to be another template literal thing. So we'll have output dot inner HTML equals a template literal. Let's do that. So we'll say output dot inner HTML equals, and then we'll do an empty template literal like this, and we'll cap that off with a semicolon. Let's just drop this down because we know we're going to have to anyway. Let's check the code. Come on. Maybe we don't need to drop it down. Output.innerHTML. Hold on. Check the code. Okay, so don't drop it down or it won't work. Whatever. Looks good, and submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 81. So when we need to lowercase a string, we can use the toLowercase method. This method returns the calling string value converted to lowercase. So we've got const first name equals all uppercase Jessica. And when we do a console.log first name dot to a lowercase, it's going to have the output of all lowercase Jessica, all right? So our output.innerHTML string will need a span element. We're going to create that and give it a class attribute set to surplus or deficit variable. Set to the surplus or deficit variable. Our surplus or deficit variable should be converted to lowercase using the toLowercase method. And we're not going to give our span any text yet. All right. So yeah, we're going to make a span element with a class set to surplus or deficit but we're going to lowercase it all inside, and this is going to be inside of a embedded expression. So let's do that. So inside here, we're going to have a span element. So open span, close span. All right. And inside of the opening tag, we're going to say, what was it? Class equals, and then we'll have the two quotes and we'll do the embedded expression like this. And what we're going to put in here is surplus or deficit. All right. Pardon me. Okay. So it's going to be either this or this, but we have to, since it's a class, because we're going to be accessing it so that we can target these things right here. We see a lowercase surplus and a lowercase deficit. Since those are both lowercase, we're going to have to wrap this thing up. Not wrap it up. We're going to have to say dot to lower case like this. And the end result of this is going to be something like this. Let's put blah, blah, blah. Let's put some numbers. Breakfast, add entry, brownies. Okay, how about that? Calculate. And you see how this is green? So yeah, that's what's going to happen. And if it's let's put a smaller number, 53, 554. Calculate, and you can see that's red. That's what we're going to be doing here. The styles.css. If it's a surplus, it's going to be red. Or light pink, whatever. And then if it's deficit, it's going to be light green. Okay. So let's get rid of the styles.css. Let's check the code. Looks good. And submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 82. So now we're going to give our span the text remaining calories, calorie, surplus or deficit. This is just singular, so there's no S at the end. We're going to be using interpolation to replace remaining calories in surplus or deficit with the appropriate variables. All right. So yeah, this is going to be the span text. So inside of this, we're going to have an embedded expression, and then we're going to have calorie embedded expression like that. And this one's going to be remaining calories, and the other one's surplus or deficit. So remaining calories, and this one's surplus or deficit. And this right here is making this right here. You see, this is the remaining calories, and this is the surplus or deficit. All right. 530. Oh, how about that? Let's do it again. And you see, this is the remaining calories. This is surplus or deficit. All right. So that's how that works. Let's check the code. Looks good. And submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 83. So when the user has a calorie deficit, the remaining calories value will be negative. All right. But we don't want to display a negative number in the result string. We sure don't. So math.abs is a built-in JavaScript method that will return the absolute value of a number. So it's const num equals -5. If we do a math.abs on that, it'll give us 5. Remember, from math, absolute value is just the distance that the number is from 0. So it's either going to be 5 in the negative direction or 5 in the positive direction in this case, right? So in our span text, we're going to wrap our remaining calories reference in math.abs to ensure that the value is positive, okay? So that's what we'll do right here. Remaining calories, we'll say in front of that math, that's not it, math.abs, all right? So that should take care of it. Let's check the code. Looks good, and submit it. All right. So now we're on to step 84. So after our span element, we're going to add an HR element to create a horizontal line, okay? To keep our code clean and readable, we should add this on a new line in the template literal. Okay. So on a new line, we're going to do the HR element. So we'll come down here, line 61, we'll tab it over and we'll say, bring it back one, and we'll say HR like this. And the HR doesn't need a closing tag because it's just going to be a line straight across. Let's go see what that's, I'm pretty sure it's this little line right here is what we're making, all right? So let's come back over here, check the code, looks good, and submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 85. So now we're going to create a P element with the text budget calories, budgeted. Okay. Let's see what that's going to look like. Okay. So it's going to be this line right here. Whoops. How about that? All right. So we're going to use interpolation to replace budget calories with the appropriate variable. And this should come after the HR element. All right. So down here, we're going to do, what was it? Budgeted calories, budgeted. Okay, cool. And what was it? A P? Okay, a P. So let's do that. We'll say open P, close P. And inside here, we'll do an embedded expression. Calories, budgeted, like that. And inside of this, we're going to do budget calories right here. Copy that, drop it off. That should take care of it. Let's check the code. Looks good. And submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 86. So using the same interpolation syntax, we're going to add a second P element with the text consumed calories, consumed, and a third with the text exercise calories, burned. And we're going to remember to replace our consumed calories and exercise calories variables with appropriate values. All right. So yeah, basically what we're going to do, not this. Over here, basically what we're doing was we're going to make this one here, and we're going to make this one here. We can see it's just like this one, but we're going to have consumed and burned on there instead, right? So let's do this. Consumed calories, exercise calories. Let's remember that because we don't want to scroll back up. Let's take 62 to the end of 61, copy that. Let's highlight 63 to the end of 62, drop it off 2 times. We're going to do the second one. We're going to do, I already forgot. Consumed calories and then exercise calories. So consumed calories right here. We'll take that, replace the second one, and then exercise calories. We'll do that for this one, right? So we'll change the second budgeted to consumed, and we'll change the third budgeted to burned, like that, right? So now it's going to do it, like I said, just like these right here. So let's check the code. Looks good. And submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 87. So finally, we're going to need to make the output ID element visible so the user can see our text. Our output variable is an element which has a class list property. The property has a remove method, which accepts a string representing the class to remove from the element. All right. So yeah, class list. Let's go over that over here. Let's type in. Actually, let's take this. It's a little bit smoother and drop it off here. All right. So here's the class list property, and basically it's just a read-only property that returns live DOM token list collection of the class attributes of the element. So basically, if there are classes associated with an element, this thing's going to be able to access it. And it also has an add, remove, replace, and toggle methods that is associated with it too, right? So let's look at the example. So we've got a const paragraph element equals document.get element by ID and then paragraph. So it's going to target any element with the paragraph ID. So when we do paragraph.classlist.remove hide, if there's a class hide associated with the paragraph ID, it'll remove it, okay? So what we're going to do now is we're going to use the remove method on the output variable's class list property to remove the hide class. And we're not going to forget to place the word hide inside of quotes, just like over here, right? So let's go check this out. Let's go look at the output property first. So we've got output over here. We've got the ID output, and we've got the output and hide classes associated with it. And so when we come over here to the CSS and we check out the hide class selector, we can see it's going to do display none. So like in the other ones, we would just say display now equals block, right? But if we can just get rid of the hide, and it'll just do the default thing, which is block anyway. So let's just come back over here to the JavaScript. And what we're going to do is we're going to make it just like this. We're going to say output dot class list dot remove hide, right? So output, yes. Okay, so output right here, output dot class list, and it's in camel case, dot remove, and then we're going to do hide like that. And that should take care of it. Let's cap this off with a semicolon, check the code, looks good, and submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 88. So if we click on our calculate remaining calories button, we'll see that nothing happens. Let's put some breakfast. How about some brownies as usual, right? There we go. And then some calories. There we go. Yes, nothing happens. And you know why? Because we still need to mount the event listener, right? So we're going to add an event listener to our calorie counter element. And the event type should be submit. And the callback function should be calculate calories. All right. So let's do that. We'll say calorie counter, calorie counter dot add event listener, and then we're going to have the submit type, submit. There we go, and then we're going to make it do, after we put a comma there, the calculate calories function. So that big one we just made right here. All right. So that should take care of it. Let's cap it off with a semicolon. There it is. Check the code. Looks good. And submit it. All right. So now we're on to step 89. So our final feature to add is the ability for a user to clear the form. We're going to start by declaring an empty function called clear form, and it should not take any arguments. You got it. So we'll start by declaring the function by saying function. We'll do clear form. We'll have the empty parentheses, and then we'll do the code block with the curly braces thusly. Let's check the code. Looks good. And submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 90. So now we're going to need to get all of the input containers. We're going to declare an input container variable, input containers variable, and assign it to the value of querying the document for all elements with the class input container. All right. So yeah, for this one, what we're going to do is we'll say const input containers equals, all right? And so we're going to have to remember how to do this. So let's just come up here. Document.querySelector all. Let's just take this right here from the D all the way to past the semicolon. Copy that, and then we'll drop it off right here. So inside of these quotes, what we're going to do is we're going to target the dot input hyphen container class like that. So let's check the code. Looks good. And submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 91. So we're going to remember that document.querySelector all returns a node list. How could we forget? Which is an array-like object, but is not an array. However, the array object does have a from method, which accepts an array-like object and returns an array, right? So this is helpful when we want to access, to more robust array methods, which we will learn about in a future project. So the following, also before we get into this, so the from method is very, very, very useful. If you go watch any of the Code Wars videos or just figure them out for yourself, the from method, it's a game changer. We'll get into it later though. So the following example takes a node list of list elements, of li elements, and converts it to an array of list item elements. Okay, so we've got an unordered list. We've got 3 list items inside of it. And then when we do const list items array equals array.from, then it has inside of the array.from document.querySelector all LIs, so any LIs that it can find. And then we do a console.log of list items array. It's going to give us the output of 3 in parentheses. I don't know what that's for. And then it's also going to give us an array like this with 3 list items inside of it, right? So we're going to wrap our input containers query selector in array.from. And we're going to do this on the same line as our declaration. All right. So yeah, let's just highlight all of document.querySelector all with the input container class in there. Let's wrap that in parentheses. Let's press the left arrow key 2 times, and then we'll say array.from right in front of the parentheses. All right. Let's check the code. Looks good. And submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 92. So it is time for another loop. We're going to create a for of loop with a variable called container to iterate through the input containers array. All right. Inside the loop, we're going to set the inner HTML property of the container to an empty string. And this is going to clear all of the contents of that input container. Okay. So we'll start off on 90. We'll say for, and then we'll do const inside of here container. And then we'll say of input containers like that, right? So just like we discussed earlier, this thing is basically like the same thing as saying input containers at I if we were doing a regular for loop, right? So now what we're going to do is say inner HTML container. Okay, so we'll do container. How about this? Container. How about that? Dot inner HTML now equals an empty string, right? So it's going to clear out all this stuff that we cooked up right here for these when we add new ones. So it's just going to clear. It's going to say this one clear, this one clear, this one clear. All right. So let's check the code. Looks good. And submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 93. So after our loop completes, we're going to need to clear the budget number input. We'll set the value property of budget number input to an empty string, right? So it's going to take whatever's in here and just set it to nothing, right? So let's come over here and we'll do budget number input dot value now equals an empty string, right? So let's check the code. Looks good. And submit it. All right. So now we're on to step 94. So we also need to clear the output element's text. We can do this by setting the inner text property to an empty string. The difference between inner text and inner HTML is that inner text will not render HTML elements, but will display the tags and content as raw text. Okay. So back when we were discussing the node lists, we were looking at the differences between the inner text and inner HTML. And basically, the inner text is just any of these right here, the text inside of the elements. And the HTML is just everything, right? So let's come back over here to JavaScript. And what we're going to do is set output. We're going to go output dot inner text now equals, you guessed it, an empty string, all right? Let's check the code. Looks good. And submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 95. So to finish off this function, we're going to need to restore the hide class to the output element. The class list property has an add method, which is the opposite of the remove method, and it accepts a string representing the class to add to the element. So yeah, back over here on the class list property page, we can see there's an add there too. I'm pretty sure we're going to use all these in future courses, but we'll get to that stuff. Anyway, so what we're going to do here is just like on the last one, we're going to say, what is it? Output dot class list dot add. Okay. And then we're going to have this string hide like that. So it's going to add the hide class that we took out of there to the output. Right. So now let's check the code. Looks good. And submit it. All right. Now we're on to step 96. So to complete this project, we're going to add an event listener to the clear button. The clear button. All right. So when the button is clicked, it should call the clear form function. All right. And with that, we're done. So let's do that. So first things first, let's take it from 100 to the end of 99, highlight 101 to the end of 100, drop it off like that. And then let's change this calorie counter up to clear button. All right. And then we'll change this submit to click. All right. And then we're going to change calculate calories to clear form like that. And that should take care of it. Let's check the code. Looks good. And submit it. All right. So that's the end of learn form validation by building a calorie counter. Now I would go on to the end of this, but you know what? Time for some bonus content. So to preface it, yesterday, one day ago, Sergeant Riley sent me a comment talking about having trouble uploading this to VS Code, right? So that gave me the idea, something. I'm going to show everyone what's up. All right, so yeah, we're going to upload this thing to VS Code, all right? So let's first, you don't have to do this, or actually, this is the way I would do it. So we're just going to finish it up one more time. We're just going to take this stuff and put it here and change this to click, and then take this because we don't need to fool around anymore, and then get rid of that. And then what we're going to do here is we'll open up VS Code and we're going to start a new folder. So let's start a new file first, text file. Let's select a language. Let's do HTML. All right, there's HTML right there. Let's come over here to the index.html. Get rid of the JavaScript for a second. Do a Control-A, Control-C to select all and copy it. And then we'll come over here and do a Control-V right there. Let's save this. File save as. Let's start up a new folder, right? So I'm going to start it on the desktop. You put it wherever you want. And then we'll do a new folder, and we'll call the folder test HTML. Why not? All right, open that up. And then we'll call this index for index.html. Right? Let's triple click or highlight or whatever. Index.html. So let's save that. So now we've got index.html here. Let's start another one with the file, new text file. Select language. We'll do CSS for this one, right? We've got this. Let's come over here. Let's get the styles.css. Do a Control-A, Control-C. Come back over here to VS Code, Control-V. File save as. And then we'll do this one, styles.css, right? So we've got styles.css right here. File new, text file, select language, JavaScript, boom. And then for this one, just like the other two, come over here, get rid of CSS, open up JavaScript. We've got the clear form already for us. Control-A, Control-C. Come over here, Control-V. File, save as, and what are we calling this? Script.js, of course. Save it. And we got script.js. Awesome. Now let's get these all over here. Let's open up the folder. We'll open up new, what was it? New something? Where's it at? Desktop. Let's go to desktop. Test HTML. Open that up. Add it. All right. Right click index.html. If you don't have live server, just go to ChatGPT. Ask it how to get live server on VS Code. That's what I did. Then we're going to open it up on live server. And wouldn't you know it, look at that. Look at that. So now we've got the calorie counter ready to fool around with on our own computers saved. We don't have to fool around with free code camp. We can do it in our own environment. All right. So there's that. So let's go back over to the free code camp JavaScript algorithms data structures main page. So now we're finished with the calorie counter. And now we're on to learn basic string and array methods by building a music player and we'll see you next time.